Superior Coverage Insurance. My name is Catherine.
Yeah, hi, this is Adam Pearson, and my wife and I just recently had a son, so we'd like to add him onto our plan.
Well, we can certainly help you with that today, but before we begin, do you have his member ID number?
What? No, he doesn't have his own account yet. I want to add him to my account.
Well, we'd be happy to assist you with that today.
Great, thank you.
Please hold while I transfer you.
Okay.
Thank you for holding. My name is Josh.
Yeah, hi, I just want to add my son to my insurance plan. Oh, and I sent in some paperwork a few weeks ago, as well as an email. I wanted to check on the status of that, too.
Our records don't show that we've received any papers yet, and I don't see the email. The Qualifying Life Events Department should be able to help you out with that. Please hold while I transfer you. Seems nobody's there.
That's all right, let's not worry about the paper.
Please hold while I transfer you.
Work.
Thank you for your patience. My name is Carl.
Hi, Carl. My name is Adam Pearson. I just want to add my son to my insurance plan.
And what is your name, sir?
Adam Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson.
Look, I just want to add my son to my insurance plan. Hello?
Yes, sir. I'm just entering in the information that you gave me. And what can I do for you today?
I just want to add my son to my insurance plan.
All right. I'd be happy to help you out with that today.
Please don't.
Please hold while I transfer you.
Transfer me.
This is Catherine.
Catherine, hi, it's Adam Pearson. My member number is 1334434. I just need to add my son to my insurance plan.
Yes, Mr. Pearson, I have your information here on my screen.
Oh.
Please hold while I transfer you.
Why? Why?
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Sunday morning church. I am so glad to be with you. I'm so thankful to Scott that he gave me this opportunity to speak. It's been over 8 months since I preached a sermon, and I really appreciate him giving me the opportunity to finish this series on Dial, a series all about prayer. I just never thought we'd be doing it this way. But thank the Lord for the technology that allows us to share with one another from our home to your home. It's an amazing thing. This past Thursday night, we had our first small online small group using Zoom, and it was absolutely amazing. It was so fun to see everybody and talk to everybody at the same time, face to face. So I'm really thankful for this technology that allows me to speak to you today. And this morning in this closing message, I want to begin by asking you a question. And the question is this: have you ever felt like God put you on hold in prayer? You know, you called him up. Scott's been using a phone as an illustration of prayer, and you called him up and did everything that Scott said in this series to do. If you've missed the series, go back and watch them. They're really good. You can find them on our webpage at bridgechurches.ca. And he told us to get in a room by ourselves, shut the door, to celebrate the greatness of God, to worship him, and then to submit ourselves to his will for our lives, and then make our request. And that's what we did. We got in that room, and you got in the room, and you worshiped him, you surrendered to his will, you made your request, and you waited for the reply, and you got nothing. Nothing. It was a feeling like it just got put on hold. And you were put on hold so long that you began to wonder, is God even there? Are you real? Do you care? If you haven't had that feeling, I have. I've experienced that many times. Maybe that's why Scott asked me to preach on this topic. Well, I know that Jesus has told us in his word, ask and you will receive. But I got to be honest with you this morning, and this may be true for some of you. I've done a lot of asking in my life, and in return receiving nothing. Nothing. Not a yes, not a no, not a maybe, not can you give me a second? Nothing. No dial tone, no nice elevator music to help pass the time, no angel coming on periodically and saying, you know, God values your call, please continue to hold. Nope, nothing. And it is so frustrating. I'll bet you've had the same experience, because everybody who prays, and everybody prays. I mean, You may not be a churchgoer. You may not really believe in Jesus. You don't usually pray, but everybody at some point in their life in a crisis, maybe a financial crisis, maybe a family crisis, a marriage crisis, a business crisis. At some point in our life, we find ourselves desperate, and out of desperation, we prayed some kind of a short prayer to God to help us. And I'll bet you've experienced the same thing I've experienced, that sense of being put on hold. And it is frustrating, isn't it? In fact, it's worse than frustrating. It actually challenges your faith. You begin to wonder, is God real? Does this prayer thing work? Are people crazy who said turn to God? You begin to wonder. And I'm going to tell you, that frustration that we have with God putting us on hold has nothing to do with us being part of the Amazon generation. You know, some people try to tell us that. The Amazon generation. You're so used to ordering something, getting it the same day or the next day, or at worst 2 days' time, and you expect God to operate the same way. But that's just not true, at least not true in this case. The truth is that everyone who has prayed from the beginning of time has had the experience, not all the time, but sometimes, of being put on hold by God. Let me give you a couple examples. Old examples, so you'll see it's not part of the Amazon generation. 500 years before the birth of Christ. 500 years before the birth of Christ. There was a man by the name of Habakkuk. Can you imagine being called Habakkuk? Put that on the back of your jersey. But Habakkuk was a prophet of God. He loved God. He served God. He prayed all the time. But sometimes he got put on hold by God. Look at one of the prayers that he prayed. Here's his prayer. How long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen? You can hear the frustration in his voice. You probably prayed something like that. And then even later than that, or earlier than that, 1,000 years before the birth of Christ. So 3,000 years ago, there was a man by the name of David. You know him. He's the guy who killed Goliath. He became king of Israel. And God said he had a heart just like his. But listen to his prayer. He got put on hold too. Listen to his prayer. He said, "Oh Lord, how long will you forget me? Forever?" I love that, forever, because it's just oozing, it's just dripping with sarcasm and with frustration. I'm telling you, when it comes to being put on hold by God in prayer, you are not alone. None of us are, because everybody has experienced it. I've been put on hold so many times. I could share with you so many stories. One time, God put me on hold for 6 years. Not 6 minutes, not 6 days, 6 months. 6 years. 6 years. You know, there was a time in our life when one of our daughters was dating somebody that Judy and I, my wife, didn't think was good for her. In fact, didn't just think he wasn't good for her, we thought he was bad for her. And so we began praying that God would separate them. Well, I'm telling you, when you're praying for your kids, it's not a casual prayer, is it? I mean, it's not, "Hey, God, if you got time, could you do this?" Oh, no. When you're praying for your kids, it's earnest. You're on your face on the floor, sucking up carpet, begging God to do something. That's how it was for me for 6 years, almost every day. I'm begging God earnestly, "You've got to do something. She's my daughter. You've got to protect her, God. You love her more than I do, and you need to break them up." And for 6 years, I was put on hold. I didn't hear a thing. Not, "Yeah, I'll take care of it." No, you don't understand. It's okay. No, neither one of those. Not a maybe. Not a give me a second. Nothing. Silence. I was put on hold. And when I looked at them, I couldn't see any evidence that God was actually answering my prayer. They weren't drifting apart. If anything, they were drifting towards each other. In fact, get this. At the end of 6 years, they got engaged. Engaged. And I'm picking up the phone and saying, "God, they got engaged. Engaged. Do you not hear me? Have you not been listening for the past 6 years? Does prayer not work? God, what are you doing?" 6 years of being put on hold before the answer came. Then not very long ago, I was put on hold for 4 years. Judy and I needed to move from our house into a bungalow. The girls were gone. We were going to retire. We needed something on one floor for Judy's needs. And so I began to pray every day. "God, will you help us find the right bungalow?" And I searched realtor.ca every day. I prayed and searched. And for 4 years, God left me on hold. He didn't say, "I'll take care of it." He didn't say, "No, you got to stay where you are." There was being put on hold. I found 3 great houses. Put offers on all 3. Asked God, give me favor with the sellers. Didn't do it. Lost every one of them. Didn't get them. Took 4 years before God got us the house we needed. It was a perfect house, but it took 4 years. And then another time, I prayed 2 years. It was for my dad. My dad died of Alzheimer's disease, and near the end of his life, he had 0 quality of life. He didn't know me. He didn't know hardly anything. And it was so hard looking at him living in that condition. And so I began to pray, God, please take my dad home to heaven. That's where he's going. Take him home. I don't want him to go. He's my hero. I love him. I'm going to miss him. But this isn't good for him. Would you please take him home? 2 years I prayed like that before God answered that prayer. 6 years, 4 years, 2 years. I'm telling you, when it comes to being put on hold by God in prayer, I'm an expert. I'm not an expert in anything else, but I'm an expert on being put on hold by God. It is just unbelievable what he does. And I'm going to tell you something. Being put on hold by God, it is definitely not a faith builder. You know, people try to tell us that. They try to say, hey, this is good for your character. Don't worry about it. It's good for your character. It's going to strengthen your faith. It's going to strengthen your confidence in prayer. Yeah? Baloney. Didn't strengthen me at all. Probably won't strengthen you either. In fact, you've got my permission. If you've been put on hold by God for a long time and somebody says to you, hey, this is going to be good for your character. It's going to build your faith. You got my permission. Just look them right square in the eye and go, because it's just not true. In fact, being put on hold by God may very well be one of the main reasons why some of you no longer believe in Jesus. You don't believe in prayer. You got to that point in your life where you needed God and you turned to God and all you got was put on hold. I'm telling you this morning, being put on hold by God is the universal frustration with God. But there's good news, and that is it doesn't have to be that way. In the last few months, after walking with God for over 60 years, I have finally discovered that there are some legitimate, logical reasons for God appearing, and I put that in parentheses, appearing to put us on hold in prayer. I wish I could share all of them with you that I've discovered, but time doesn't allow us to do that. Your kids are going to be all over you soon, and so we need to end this sermon before too long. So I'm just going to share with you what I believe is the number one reason why we feel like God at times puts us on hold in prayer. The number one reason, I believe, is because most of us have an inaccurate view of how life, God, and prayer works. I'm not pointing a finger. This is true for me, too. We have an inaccurate view of how life, God, and prayer works. Let me show you what I mean, and maybe you'll see yourself in this as well. Isn't it true that when we think of God and we think of prayer, that we kind of picture in our minds something like a chessboard in heaven with just one set of players on it, and those players represent us, our life, our loved ones, our friends, the things that are part of our life. And God's responsibility is to move those players where, how, and when we tell them to in prayer. For example, we say, oh God, I want that job, I want that car, I want that boat, I want that house, I want that person. God, would you move whichever player on my board would cause that to happen? And God, move them 2 squares, not just one, because I'm in a hurry. And God says, of course I'll do that for you. And he makes the move. He doesn't strategize as to whether that's a good move for us or not, because he's not playing the game. It's not his game, it's ours. It's not his life, it's ours. And we tell him that all the time. His job only is to move the players as we tell him to move it. Isn't that how we really understand prayer deep in our hearts? That's how we think it's supposed to be? Well, that may be how we think it is, but I've got to assure you this morning, that is not how the spiritual world works. It's not how God works, and it's definitely not how prayer works. We may be correct in picturing a chessboard in heaven, with God there beside it, and God is the one who moves the players in response to our prayers. But that movement is based on how, when, and where he knows is best. God's not some mindless, doting old grandfather in heaven who just moves the players on the board whenever we want him to move, wherever we want him to move it. Oh no. God is the master strategist. He knows what move is the best move for us, and those are the moves that he makes. You see, God is one who can enable us to make the best move, because God told us himself through the prophet Isaiah, only I can tell you the future before it happens. God's the only one that can do that. They tell me that good chess players can see 15 moves ahead, and the very best can see 25 moves ahead. But God who knows the future before it happens, he can see every possible move and the consequences of every possible move before we even make the first move. And so he will only move those players on the board the way that he knows is best for us. So we may say, God, move them 2. He'll move them 1. We may say, God, move it now. He'll say, no, next week, next month, next year, because God knows the consequences of every move, and he'll only make those moves that are best for us. The second thing that we miss about that chessboard in heaven is that there are actually 2 sets of players on the board. There's an opponent on the board as well. And we need to understand that on this chessboard, there is a constant struggle between right and wrong, good and evil. The truth is, whether you realize it or not, we're involved in spiritual warfare. We know that because Paul the Apostle, who was a historical figure in the first century and wrote about half of the New Testament, wrote to the church in Ephesus, and he said this to them. He said, for we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies. In other words, we're not fighting against people. People are not our enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. You see, the world that we see and the world that we touch, your living room, your office, your kitchen, wherever you are right now, that's just such a small part of the world you and I live in. Around the physical world, there is a spiritual world that is even greater than our physical world. And it's in that spiritual world where there is constant movement all the time. There are fighting between the good angels and the bad angels that is going on all the time. That battle is continually going on. We don't think of that world very often because it's invisible. It's unseen, out of sight, out of mind. It's kind of like the world of Wi-Fi and the internet. You know, you can't see that world either. You take your smartphone and you phone somebody across the street and you look out your window. You don't see your words going through the air to the other house. You don't see anything there at all. You sit down with your spouse and you airdrop a picture from your phone to their phone. You don't see a picture come out of your phone and into their phone. It just goes through the air. It's amazing. You can't see that. If we could ever put on a special pair of glasses that would allow us to see into the world of Wi-Fi and the internet, we would be shocked at what we see. One artist kind of drew a picture to help us get a glimpse into that world of Wi-Fi and the internet. Here's what he drew. You'll see it here. I don't know if you can see it well on your screen, but there's all these lines going everywhere, all around. Here's the people, and all the air is just filled all over with these lines going back and forth, carrying all these messages, all of this information, but we don't see it. They're going around right now. You look out your front window, and all through the air, those movements of those electronic things are going through the air. I can't explain it, but they're going through the air. But I'll tell you, if you could ever put on a pair of spiritual glasses that would allow you to see into the spiritual world, you'd even be more amazed. For I'm telling you, there are millions and millions, if not billions and billions of angels moving back and forth all around us in the spiritual world that surrounds us. And not all of those angels are good. Some of them are the fallen angels that fell with Satan when he rebelled against God in heaven. And so there's these fallen angels and the good angels, and they're battling each other. Some people even believe that we each have our own personal guardian angel. What do you think? Do you have a guardian angel? I didn't know what to think about that until I looked at what Jesus taught about that. It's very interesting. Matthew, who was a contemporary of Jesus, traveled with Jesus, and he wrote down verbatim what Jesus said. Not all of everything he said, but a lot of what he said. And one of the things he quoted Jesus as saying had to do with these guardian angels. Here's what he wrote. Jesus said, "See that you do not despise one of these little ones." He's talking about children. "For I say to you that their angels in heaven continually see the face of my Father who is in heaven." Notice he said, their angels. He didn't say my angels. He didn't say, my Father in heaven's angels. He said, their angels. Apparently, we all have our own personal angel or angels. I don't know which it is, but according to Jesus, we have them. And you may wonder, well, what do those angels do? Well, what do all of the angels do? Well, it depends whether they're good angels or evil angels, fallen angels. The fallen angels, they're trying to fulfill Satan's purpose in the world. And Jesus himself told us what Satan's purpose is. He said Satan came in this world to steal, kill, and destroy. Satan has one purpose in mind: to destroy your life, destroy your family. Look around your family right now. Satan's plan is to destroy every one of their lives, every one of their internal lives. The good angels, on the other hand, their purpose is to care for people who will inherit salvation. In other words, the purpose of the good angels is to protect us, watch over us, guide us, help us throughout life. And so you've got the evil angels who are trying to influence us to do something, make bad choices, disguised as good choices, and the good angels are trying to influence us to make right choices, righteous choices, the choices that would benefit our families. And so this battle is going on all the time between the good and the evil, each one trying to win. And the truth is that battle goes on through influence. These angels have different goals and different purposes, but the way they go about their work is the same. They're trying to influence us. See, angels, good angels, bad angels, even God himself can't make you, me do anything, because God's given us free will. And so the only way an angel can make us do what they want is to influence. So the bad angels are trying to influence you to choose what is ultimately to your harm. And the good angels are trying to influence you to do what is right. This battle is going on all the time. It's going on as these angels come around us and they influence, they whisper in our ears, do this, do that, and so on. And that kind of thing is happening right now. That battle is going on right now. Satan's fallen angels are whispering in your ear. Turn this off. Stop listening. Go make a cup of coffee. Go play with the kids. Go do something else. This guy's crazy. God's angels are whispering in your ear. Listen to this. There's something here that could help you. And so this battle is constantly going on back and forth and back and forth. And we need to see an example of it to understand it. Because you see, when you hear this, I know it sounds like it's in the world of make-believe. That maybe this is like a Marvel superhero movie where they put this kind of battle going on in the unseen world. But I'm telling you, it's not make-believe, it's reality. And a guy can help us see this because Daniel is a historical figure and he shares an event in his life that happened in history that can help us understand this battle. You may remember who Daniel is because you may have heard the story about Daniel in the lion's den. And he was thrown into a den of lions, a cage of hungry lions, because he refused to stop praying 3 times a day. But God shut the mouths of those lions, so Daniel wasn't hurt. But Daniel was actually a teenage boy living in Jerusalem, serving God, loving God, a very holy man. When the Babylonians came in and defeated Israel, and they took many of the Israelites, including Daniel, back to Babylon, back to a city in modern-day Iraq, as slaves. Well, it wasn't long after that Persia, under the leadership of King Cyrus, came and defeated the Babylonians. And so now Daniel, still in Iraq, was slave to Cyrus. Well, Daniel was burdened for his homeland, as almost all Jews are. He was longing to know that the city of Jerusalem, the walls had been rebuilt, and longing to know that the temple had been rebuilt. So Daniel began to pray and fast, not just pray, he was fasting as well. that God would cause King Cyrus to show favor towards the Israelites and allow them to go back to the promised land. So he's praying for this, that God would show them favor and favor towards him so that they'd let him go back. And so he prayed not just one day, he actually prayed for 21 days. He prayed for 21 days. The King Cyrus, who was a wicked king, he wasn't a believer, he was a heathen king, that he would show favor to the Israelites. For 21 days, fasted and prayed. And it was as if God had put him on hold, because God didn't say yes, God didn't say no. And as he looked at King Cyrus, he couldn't see any change in him. He wasn't showing favor towards the Israelites. But then on the 24th day, an angel of the Lord showed up. Scared the heebie-jeebies right out of Daniel. You can't blame him. I mean, if you had an angel show up in a vision to you today, I'll bet you'd scare the life out of you as well. It says the blood drained from his face, and he was so scared he fell to the ground. But then the angel started talking to him, and he records this conversation. I want to show it with you here. The angel said, Daniel, you who are highly esteemed, consider carefully the words I'm about to speak to you, and stand up, for I have now been sent to you. So he gets him to stand up, and he says this to him. He says, and when he said this to me, I stood up, trembling. Then he continued, do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your God, in other words, from the first day you began to pray and to fast, your words were heard. And I have come in response to them. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, of the chief priests, the leader of the chief priests, princesses rather, came to help me, because I was detained there with the king of Persia. Now I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the future, for the vision concerns a time yet to come. So here's Daniel. He's praying for favor for the Israelites with King Cyrus. He's begging God. He's not eating. He's just praying morning, noon, and night. God, cause the king to show favor. Cause the king to show favor. And all Daniel sees is that God has put him on hold, because there's nothing happening, nothing changing. God isn't talking to him. God isn't telling him anything. And Cyrus isn't changing. But then all of a sudden the angel shows up and he says to him, hey, look, since the first day you started to pray, God heard every word. In fact, not only did he hear your words, but he sent me in response to them to answer your prayer. He sent me that first day you started to pray to influence Cyrus to show favor to the Israelites. But the angel says, but the prince of Persian kingdom, that's the fallen angel that Satan is assigned to King Cyrus. He resisted me 21 days. So here's this battle going on between these two angels, between the fallen angel serving Cyrus and Satan, and God's angel who's trying to get Cyrus to show favor. There's a battle, and it's an intense battle back and forth. You see, angels aren't invincible. They aren't all powerful. Only God is. And so these two angels are fighting hard. Both are strong. Both are powerful. And the angel of the Lord can't get over top of Satan's angel. He can't gain greater influence. And so eventually it says that God sends reinforcements in Michael. He is the great warrior angel, the most powerful, who can bring great victory to him. He sends him, and as the two of them work together, they are able to overcome the angel of Satan. And they influence Cyrus, and Cyrus begins to show favor towards the Israelites so that they can rebuild the wall and rebuild the temple. And this is how the spiritual battle works. It's back and forth, and they fought so hard, and because Daniel kept praying, eventually reinforcements came and the victory was won. This is an amazing glimpse into the spiritual world that we usually don't get a chance to see. And it's so to our advantage, because in this story we are shown two very important truths about God and about prayer. The first one is this, that the battle in the spiritual world is very intense at times. This is not a wimpy battle. This is an intense, fierce battle because both are powerful. Neither one wants to give up. Neither one wants to give in. They are willing to fight as long as it takes. It is fierce. So fierce that God had to send in reinforcements so he would gain the victory. It's a fierce battle sometimes in order for God to get for us what we've asked for him. And it is the fierceness and intensity of this battle that leads to the second thing it teaches us. Because of the intensity of the battle and the power of the enemy, Satan is powerful. He is strong and he doesn't give up. Sometimes victory takes time. Sometimes victory takes time. In this case, it took 21 days, but it could have taken 21 weeks, 21 months, 21 years. You see, most of us have no idea what happens in the spiritual world when we pray. I don't know about you, but I kind of thought, I pray, God says, okay, he snaps his fingers and everything falls into place. But that is not the way it works in the spiritual world. We need to realize that Satan lets no good thing happen in our lives on contestants. He lets no good thing happen to you, to your family, no answer to prayer uncontested. Whenever God wants to bless us, Satan's going to fight that blessing. Whenever you pray and ask for something, Satan's going to fight against that. The truth is that God is always fighting for what is good and best for you and for your family. And Satan is always fighting against what is good and best for you and your family. Always for, always against. And so there's this constant battle in heaven, and those battles are so intense that sometimes it takes time. When Judy and I began praying for our daughter to break up with that guy, unbeknownst to us, it unleashed an unbelievable battle in the spiritual world that took 6 years to win. It didn't take 6 years because God's not strong enough. It didn't take 6 years because God put us on hold. It wasn't 6 years because God didn't care. It took 6 years because God has given my daughter and every one of us free will. He can't force us to do anything. And because we have a strong enemy. And so God knew that if he was going to answer our prayer, and if he was going to break them up, he had to gently influence her. And I say gently because as a parent or a grandparent, if you're trying to get your kids or grandkids to stop doing something that you think is bad for them, if you come in like a bull in a china shop, that you're just going to push them further into the very thing you're trying to get them out of. And God knows that. And so he knew he had to come in and just gently begin to influence her and change her heart. You see, God had to work on her heart. He had to remove some of the obstacles that are actually blocking her from doing what God wanted. And he had to create some obstacles to keep her from going back to him. And so God, in his love and his grace, had to influence her. And I'm telling you, when the heart is involved or the will is involved, that's not something that happens in a few minutes, few days, few weeks, few months, sometimes even a few years. It takes time to do that. It's kind of like the constant dripping, drip by drip by drip. And so God was influencing day after day after day as I was praying. And after 6 years, in an instant, the Spirit of God broke through her heart. And she realized that what she was doing was not right. It happened in an instant, but it took 6 years of fighting to make that instant possible. The truth is, as we kept praying for her, as long as Judy and I, her sisters and others who knew and cared for her, as long as we kept praying for her, God kept fighting. That was our part, to pray, and God was fighting. God was fighting and fighting and fighting for her. And that's an amazing thing. And because we kept praying, God kept fighting. I really believe with all my heart, if Judy and I and her sisters and others had stopped praying any time during that 6 years, the outcome might have been very different and very tragic. But because we kept praying, God kept fighting, and he eventually won the victory. Friends, I want to tell you in closing this morning that God never puts us on hold in prayer. Never, ever. Now, I know that sometimes it feels that way because the battle over our prayers and over our lives and our loved ones is fought in the unseen world, in the spiritual world. And so it seems to us like God has just taken the receiver and put us on hold. But I want to tell you, because of what I've seen in Daniel's life and what I've seen in my own life, God hasn't put you on hold. What he's actually done is he's put that phone down so that he could go out and he could fight for you. Fight for your kids, grandkids, whoever. Fight to answer your prayer until the victory is won. I'm telling you, when I understood that, and it was just a few months ago, when I understood that, I was so excited. I really was, because this changed everything. For now going forward, when it seems like God's put me on hold, I get excited because it means he hasn't put me on hold. It means he's just put the phone down and he is out there right now fighting for my prayer, fighting for my life, fighting for my family. And I'm telling you, that's exciting. It inspires me. God, if you're going to fight, I'm going to pray. And I keep praying, and I keep praying, and I keep praying. And God keeps fighting and fighting. And I know if I will hold on long enough, God will never give up on me. He'll never give up on my family. And the victory will eventually come. And my friends, the same is true for you. If you've been praying for somebody in your family, some of your kids, grandkids, a sibling, parents, fighting for friends, I don't know who, but if you've been praying for somebody for a long time, and you really felt like, God's just put me on hold. He hasn't said yes, he hasn't said no, nothing has changed, he's just put me on hold. I want you to get excited. I want you to get excited this morning because that means that God hasn't put you on hold. He's put the phone down, and right now he's fighting for you. He's fighting for your kids. He's fighting for your grandkids. He's fighting for the people you're praying about. And if you'll keep praying and keep trusting the Lord, he's going to keep fighting and fighting and fighting until the victory is won. Jesus is invincible. If you allow him, he will use his influence, his powerful influence, to win the day. So get excited. If you're on hold right now, this is one of the best days of your life because you know that God right now is fighting for you. So keep praying as you've never prayed before.